Okay, second grade. I have a super exciting science lesson for us today. So this is day 2 of our outdoor adventure that's kind of taking place in our own backyard. So today we're going to look at 4 different kinds of ecosystems. And here, if you take a look, are some clues as to what they will be. So we have a kind of a tropical jungle-y looking tree, some pine trees over here, maybe some kind of a forest. This looks a little bit like the ocean or the tide pools, and this looks kind of like a desert. So those are going to be the 4 ecosystems we're looking at today. Okay, so we're going to put on our ecologist hats. Yesterday we were botanists. We studied botany, we studied plants and flowers that we found in our backyard. Today we're going to be ecologists. So Miss Miliono, you might be thinking to yourself, what is an ecologist? Well, let me tell you. An ecologist is someone who studies different environments and ecosystems. An environment is kind of the world around us. So we are in a city environment. And an ecosystem is kind of the life force around everything. An ecosystem is how all life works together to create that environment. So there are many ecosystems, and ecosystems allow specific animals to live and thrive. For example, one ecosystem would be a river. And a fish needs a river to survive. It needs the water not to have salt. It needs to be fresh water. There need to be things that they can eat. I'm sorry, I totally blanked out on my thought again. It's that Monday brain, guys. Anyway, that's what an ecosystem is. It's very similar to an environment, but it has a little bit more of a function. And an environment is just what you kind of see when you're around you. An ecosystem is how everything works together. Okay, so by the end of the day, we will be able to create and describe a dream garden based on the type of ecosystem of your choosing. And by the end of the week, we will build skills in science and art by exploring our backyards. We will engage in hands-on activities that help us to learn. And you guys have already done that starting yesterday. Or rather today. No, yesterday. Yesterday when the video was posted. Today when I'm recording it. Okay, so on the agenda, what are we doing today? So I'm going to explain that. Then words to know that are going to be helpful because we're probably going to learn a lot of new words. Today. We're going to talk about ecosystems. Then we're going to I'm going to tell you about the Dream Garden Blueprint project. And then you'll be able to post your discussion, and I'll talk about your discussion questions. Okay, so words to know. A resource or resources is kind of the stuff that a place or a thing has. The resources are the different kind of things that are available. So if I was in an ecosystem or an environment that had a lot of water, one of my resources would be water. If I was in a forest, one of my resources would be lots of wood, so I could build a fire and keep myself warm. An environment is a place where a living thing lives, what that place looks like, feels like, and its resources. So in the environment I'm in right now, I'm in a city environment. I'm looking around, and this is where I live. I live in the city of San Jose. It looks like a big city. It has lots of tall buildings, lots of kind of different little places where lots of people live. It feels busy. It feels really kind of hot outside. And the resources that are available, we have lots of technology here. We also have lots of places to eat and lots of people if we ever need help with something. An oasis is a place in the desert where water is found. So water in the desert is really hard to find. And so when you do find water, it's kind of like, ah. So an oasis is it's a place in the desert where water is found. It usually is a pool, and it has trees growing around it because they're so close to the water that they can actually grow, and there's actually plants that grow there. Humid means when there's water vapor in the air. So basically, we've learned about water vapor in our water cycle science lesson, and sometimes the water vapor stays in the air instead of going up to the clouds right away because it's just really, when the air is really heavy and you feel sweaty and sticky, whereas our air can feel really dry and hot, the air, when it's humid, feels really wet and heavy and sticky. And then finally, temperate is an environment that has nice temperatures. It just means it's kind of not too hot, not too cold. Okay, so let's talk about our ecosystem. So an ecosystem is living things and their environment. So the ecosystem is how everything works together. So let's talk about the desert. The desert, as we know, it's hot and dry. It's mostly rocky and sandy. There's an oasis occasionally in the desert. Plants that don't need a lot of water live in the desert because it only rains a couple times a year, so these plants have to be really good at only living on a little bit of water. Our next ecosystem that we're going to study is the tropical rainforest. The tropical rainforest is hot and humid and it's very rainy. It rains a lot, as you can tell in the name. The ground is covered in mud and dirt and lots of water. There's rocks, there's flowers, there's plants and trees everywhere. So as you can see, these are almost completely different. The tropical rainforest, it's raining all the time, and as you can see, there's just rocks everywhere. There's water, lots of waterfalls, lots of rivers. There's all these trees. There's almost no ground. I can't even see any ground that isn't absolutely covered in trees. Whereas if you look at the desert, there's hardly anything growing. Our next ecosystem will be the tide pool. So the tide pool isn't quite the ocean. It's the part right before the ocean that's really, it's close to the ocean, but it's not quite open water. It's where there's a lot of rocks. It's usually pretty shallow. This is where you find all those cool clams and shells and starfish, and sea anemones as well. So it's warm, cool, or cold depending on where it is. So in kind of North America, these would be pretty cold, but towards the equator, which is like the middle of the earth, like the center, where it gets hotter. Not the center like the inside, but yeah, you know what? I'll show it to you guys. I'll show it to you on a map, but basically what the equator is, it's the middle of the earth. So it's not, we have the two poles, which is the north and the south pole. It's that middle, it's like right in between those. So it has lots of rocks and salt water. It's rainy, sunny, or windy, or the kind of temperature it is, the kind of weather. And it's home to a lot of sea creatures and plants as well. So as you can see, there's lots of barnacles on these rocks here. There's lots of starfish as well. As you can see in the water, it's just covered in these plants. It's covered in seaweed. And so a lot of life is able to grow here. And remember, this is salt water. The water in the rainforest, the rivers, that's fresh water. It doesn't have any salt in it, but this is salt water. And then we have the temperate forest, which is warm to very cold. So it can be warm, it can be nice, or it can be really, really cold because it snows there. It takes all types of weather. So it can be rainy, it can be cold, it can be sunny, it can have hail and sleet, which is kind of like when ice falls from the sky when it's not quite snow. It snows there. It can be really just nice, and so it has a lot of trees, grass, dirt, plants, and wildflowers. And because of the weather changes so much in the temperate forest, it's not totally covered in plants and flowers because a lot of them freeze in the winter, but because it gets so much water, all of these trees are able to grow and it's still able to be pretty green there. So those are our 4 different types of ecosystems that we're focusing on for this lesson. So ecologists, you are now going to get to design your own dream garden. Imagine that you had basically that you were able to design the garden of your dreams, and you were able to dream it up. You were able to add anything that you wanted. It would be as big as you wanted it to be. what you're going to get to do is you're going to get to design this garden. I know this picture is supposed to be of the tide pool and this is supposed to be of the desert. I couldn't find a lot of super good images, so I just kind of did the best that I could. But what you're going to get to do is you're going to get to pick your favorite ecosystem. So did you like the tide pool the best? Did you like the desert? Did you like the temperate forest the best? Or did you like the tropical rainforest? Which one were you the most interested in? You're going to design your garden based on one of these ecosystems. So you can make the garden whatever you want it to be. It just has to be based on and include the elements of, which is what we just talked about, the elements of one of these forests. So you're going to draw a blueprint. This says begin your diorama. I had an idea to do a diorama. I think we're just going to do a blueprint and a drawing though, because I don't want to make it too complicated. Okay, so your job, as I mentioned, pick your favorite ecosystem or one that you want to learn more about. The desert, the temperate forest, the tide pools, or the tropical rainforest. You're going to open your Day 2 research guide. So I have posted that. It's in pictures on the website. So I've posted that for you. You're going to find your ecosystem and take a look at the information on the page to learn more. You can always also go on the internet and do some research on your ecosystem. So your blueprint, you're going to design a drawing. Your garden needs a place to sit, plants, trees, and flowers that all kind of go according to your ecosystem, a water feature, so it has to have a pool or a fountain or a river. So if you're doing the desert, you would include an oasis. You're going to think about the weather and the environment. So if your garden takes place in the tropical rainforest, you're probably going to want some cover so you can maybe sit out there and not get soaking wet. If you're in the temperate forest, you got to take into account the fact that it rains and it snows there. And you also, if you're in the tide pools, you got to think about the fact that it is almost completely underwater. So just take into account the weather and the environment. So in your discussion, I want you to make a video telling me what you picked, describe your blueprint, and tell me your plan, and then talk about what you learned today. So I'll upload this as well, but you're going to design a blueprint, which means you're going to draw out what your garden is going to look like. You're going to label the different parts of your garden. So you're going to label the water feature. You're going to label like the trees and the plants and the flowers, the place to sit. You're going to tell me all about that. And you're going to show it to me in the video that you make. All right, good luck. And I will see you guys tomorrow virtually because it'll be Wednesday. All right. Good luck, everyone.